In the eternal twilight of Foker, where shadow and light wage their endless war, they say love is the most dangerous prey of all. For Lyra of the Swiftwind clan, an Okami scout whose silver fur matched the moons above, this truth would reshape her world as surely as the tides reshape the shore. She first saw him on the borderlands, where the mist-wreathed forests of her people gave way to the dark grandeur of Umbervale. Cassius Vane, scion of the Night Whisperer bloodline, moved like living shadow through the twilight gloom. He had been hunting, as all his kind did, but something made him pause when their eyes met across the boundary stones. Perhaps it was the way she stood her ground, unflinching, when lesser beings would have fled. Perhaps it was how the moonlight seemed to dance in her fur as she shifted from wolf to woman. Or perhaps it was simply that fate, in its cruel wisdom, had decided to make sport of them both. "You're far from your towers, vampire," she said, her hand resting on the spirit-blessed blade at her hip. The wind carried his scent to her, ancient stone and spiced blood, the perfume of the damned. "And you're far from your pack, little wolf," he replied, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. Yet there was something in his tone that wasn't mockery, something that made her keen ears prick forward with interest. It should have ended there, predator and prey, vampire and beast folk, their kinds locked in eternal enmity since the Crimson Awakening. But destiny, it seemed, had other plans. They met again at the twilight markets, that neutral ground where even sworn enemies could trade under the watchful eyes of the merchant princes. Lyra was there seeking medicines for her clan, while Cassius claimed to be sourcing rare ingredients for his alchemical studies. Their hands touched over a bundle of moonflower stems, and neither pulled away as quickly as they should have. "These are poisonous to your kind," she said, noting how his pale fingers lingered near hers. "Perhaps I enjoy a little poison now and then," he answered, and his smile held secrets she found herself wanting to unravel. Meetings that should never have happened became regular occurrences. In hidden groves and forgotten ruins, they shared stories of their people's histories. She spoke of the elemental Kami and the wild joy of running with her pack beneath the moons. He told tales of the ancient courts of Umbervale, of intrigue and artistry that had flourished in the darkness for millennia. But love, like all beautiful things in Foker, bore thorns. War came as it always did, wearing the mask of politics. The Crimson Crown passed to a new vampire lord, Malik the Soul Reaver, whose ambitions could not be contained by treaties or traditions. He launched a campaign against the beast folk territories, claiming they harbored fugitives from vampire justice. Lyra found herself leading scout parties against vampire raiding groups, while Cassius was commanded to lead strikes against beast folk settlements. Each night they met in secret became more dangerous, more desperate. "Come with me," he whispered one evening, as they lay hidden in the ruins of an ancient temple. "We could flee to the far reaches of Foker, where neither vampire nor beast folk hold sway." But Lyra's heart was bound to her people as surely as the moons were bound to the sky. "And what of my clan? Would you have me abandon them to Malik's tender mercies?" The war escalated. The Soul Reaver employed dark magics that corrupted the very land, while the beast folk called upon powers that hadn't been invoked since the time of the elemental Kami. Villages burned, ancient treaties were broken, and the Twilight Realm echoed with the sounds of battle. Their secret meetings became rarer, more fraught with danger. Each time they parted, neither knew if it would be for the last time. Yet still they came, drawn together by a force as inexorable as gravity. The turning point came at the Battle of Weeping Woods. Lyra's clan was ambushed by vampire forces, led unknowingly by Cassius himself. In the chaos of combat, they found themselves face to face, her spirit blade against his shadow-forged sword. Around them, beast folk warriors shifted between forms, their primal fury meeting the cold precision of vampire warriors. The air crackled with magic as necrosages dueled with beast folk shamans. But for Lyra and Cassius, time seemed to stop. "I can't let you slaughter my people," she said, her voice thick with grief and rage. "And I can't betray my blood," he replied, even as his sword arm trembled. The battle hung in the balance until Lyra's younger sister, barely more than a cub, was cornered by vampire knights. Without hesitation, Cassius turned his blade on his own kind, buying time for the young one to escape. The price of his choice was swift and terrible. Branded a traitor, he was struck down by his own lieutenants. Lyra's howl of anguish shook the trees themselves. Her transformation into wolf form was instantaneous, her fury drawing upon powers she didn't know she possessed. The very shadows seemed to bend to her will as she tore through the vampire ranks, reaching Cassius's fallen form. What happened next became legend among both peoples. As vampire warriors closed in, Lyra stood over Cassius's body, her fur blazing with moonlight. She called upon Kaze no Kami with a desperation born of love, while Cassius's innate vampire powers resonated with her plea. In a burst of power that left witnesses temporarily blind, they vanished. Some say they died that day. Others claim they were transformed by powers beyond mortal understanding. The more romantic versions of the tale insist they found sanctuary in a hidden valley, where the boundaries between light and shadow blur, and love can flourish in the twilight. But in the great halls of Umbervale and around the fires of beast folk camps, their story is still told. It serves as both warning and inspiration, a reminder that love, like the eternal twilight of Fokker itself, knows no boundaries of race or creed. The war raged on, for wars rarely end with love stories. But in quiet moments, when the moons are full and the shadows grow long, both vampire and beast folk sometimes speak of the wolf girl who loved a vampire, and of the choices we make in the name of love. In Umbervale, they say the Night Whisperer bloodline never quite recovered its former glory, as if some essential power had been lost with Cassius. And in the lands of the beast folk, they say that on certain nights, when the wind blows just right, you can hear both wolf's song and vampire's whisper twining together in the darkness. For in Fokker, where light and shadow dance their eternal dance, even the impossible can find a way to bloom in the twilight hours between dusk and dawn.